Sometimes in our seeking journey, there can be a phase where the new concepts, the concepts of wisdom, understanding, the pointers pointing to that which the seeking seems to be about, feel so juicy, resonate so deeply within our being in unexplainable ways. We can't really seem to make out a logic for why we are so attracted towards listening or seeing or thinking, reading about or talking about these concepts, these frameworks of God, of life, of the facade that the older version of life has been. And that phase naturally falls away as well and may evolve or morph into a more quieter phase where there's no need to read more or listen to more or talk about it anymore. And sometimes what happens, what may happen, that very subtly, the reading, the talking, the listening about it has been so rewarding at some time that now, even if it is not needed or is not rewarding in the same way, there seems to be a practice out of habit that may be going on. That no, I need to finish this book about a certain sage, not because I'm interested, but because what else is there to do? Or I need to join satsang because who knows, I may hear something or something may be received in a way that I don't have yet or I don't understand yet. Talking about these concepts, even though we may feel drained, energetically speaking, after sitting with a friend who has no interest in seeking, but because we are so passionate about how life has been a lie and how the search for truth is really what a human birth is about, and we think we care for a friend. So we take it upon ourselves as a responsibility to enlighten them or to motivate them to turn inward, not realizing that it is more draining than energizing. And it's not helping the relationship either. So there may come a time to realize, to accept that what has been received doesn't need to be shared. And that, having said that, what does it really mean? It doesn't need to be shared. What has been received, what has unveiled, what has been understood will be shared inevitably. in the way we are, in the way we sit, in the way we stand, the way we see, the way we interpret life, in all our little daily activities, the way we walk, inevitably in ways life will transform in a way that it doesn't overwhelm us in the way that it used to before. And that is enough. Even if I do not say a single word about what has been understood or what has fallen away, even if not even a single sentence, so-called spiritual sentence, is talked about or shared or broadcasted from our being, if no word ever comes out, and essentially we just carry on with life as we have always carried on as, and yet there is a subtle shift within where the attitude towards that life is different now. That is all that's needed for, well, our world to be a different place. And if there is an objective world, so even that world to be a different place. So when I said that what has been understood doesn't need to be shared, not that there is any other way, it will be shared in many, many levels of perception and experiencing. And the other out there may or may not perceive that shift, that change, that message according to their own destiny, according to their own genes and up-to-date conditioning. And we don't even have to say a single word. We don't even have to intend to share what is happening within us and what seeking is about, what end of seeking is about. Words are not needed. And if this concept lands the way it is intended to land, there is this subtle movement within our systems sometimes that uses the reason of goodwill or the reason of service, the reason of sharing this wisdom with our loved ones, with the world, well, manipulating ourselves as a good cause, as the most noble thing that can ever be done. And yet, within, if looked at honestly, is just a way of distracting ourselves from our own deepening. So if the wisdom doesn't need an instrument to share it, it inherently is, with or without even putting it into language. So in that seeing, in that landing, surrendered living is the only service ever possible and ever needed in the world. And what that surrendered living translates into as daily living, as what we end up doing in daily life, is totally up to God's will. It's totally up to the flow of life as it is destined to be, designed to be in every little particular moment. So whether I end up coming on Zoom and talking about seeking and end of seeking, or whether I just sit in my room marinating in those concepts, or whether I live my life exactly as it was before, go to a job, take care of our children, take care of the house, travel once a year, spend time with family, or just sell everything off and take on to a world travel thing and just carry on with life as it does in that storyline, or just give everything up, go to a monastery or in a cave for the rest of this body's life. Any version of the flow of life is okay, is allowed. Whatever kind of life is lived by this person, by the body, is not determining whether understanding has taken place or not. So, in a way, it is impossible to know if understanding has taken place anywhere else or not. It can only be confirmed for our own self. And the confirmation of understanding, or more accurately, falling away of misunderstanding, is not an event. It's not as if, let's say, I'm sitting in meditation and I'm like, oh, look at that. Misunderstanding has fallen away. It's not an event to be noted, to be observed or perceived as a label that yes, it is done now. It may, the need for confirmation may even fall away, because who cares whether understanding has taken place or not? And maybe as a surprise, as a reflection towards life in the, let's say, past few weeks or months or years, one may sit back and realize that, oh, there hasn't been attachment, that discomfort with myself in a very long time. So system must have changed. Misunderstanding must have weakened or fallen away. Who knows and who cares? It's only the separate psychological suffering self that cares about enlightenment, that cares about understanding, and that cares about sharing the understanding. So, what if no words are needed? What if it's okay to just sit quietly, without and within, and not to force the quietness or forcing the thoughts to stop or not arise anymore, but quietness in the sense of involvement towards whatever might be going on outwardly or inwardly? Is it possible to just leave the content of experience, whatever it may be, however full of growth or however full of overwhelm or bliss or noise it may be? Is it possible to not discriminate or differentiate between a peaceful content of experience and a full of suffering content of experience? Yes, they are different in quality. They feel different. And yet, is it possible to just not hold on to it as good or bad at all and just let whatever is just be? It's not my job for me to even look at it or ignore it or embrace it or run away from it, understand it, investigate, drop it. No movement is required. Whatever might be in the content is fully there, and I can just leave it alone, and I can be alone. And in that distancing, in that withdrawing from the content that may be held on to, there can be a natural resting within that which is called I. And that might be the beginning of self-inquiry in practice, not as a concept anymore. What is this I? Can this I be located or experienced or found? What has to be here for I, the person, to exist? There's something prior to Gurleen, for sure. And how for sure? Because conception happened, there was a fetus, and the baby was born. The baby was named maybe after 4 days, a week, a month, who knows? That baby was alive. There was something there already. And the name was put on top of it. And then in 6 months, 8 months, however many months, that name was taken on as me. So when Gurleen sound was made anywhere out there, there was attention that went there responding to that sound. And then it became my name. And then it became me. And then there were characteristics that came onto this me, Gurleen. So what is the source? What is here already prior to Gurleen? Prior to all those characteristics and personality? And this range of questioning is not something we think about. It's not, this question is not to be thought about. The content, the personal construct of me, when is allowed to just be as it is without trying to fix it, without trying to judge it, without trying to embrace it, love it, when the involvement weakens and falls away towards this personality, simultaneously to that, the unveiling may happen where the actual self-inquiry, inquiry towards what is the self, what am I really, can happen. And there is nothing to do. If something in us is trying to figure out how to let go of the content and how to start really genuinely starting the process of self-inquiry, even that needs to just be left alone. The moment there is a holding on to that movement and then moving with it as it, and the moment it is caught, a dropping can happen. Just like we have our hand on the burner and the burner is burning, and we are kind of trying to find where to stop the fire from, but our hand is still on the burner. And the moment we catch it, it's like, oh, just take the hand away. We can figure that out later, that the burner is burning. But I can immediately take my hand off and I can be free from the pain of that burn without really even turning the burner off. All I need is just to catch myself, catch my hand in the fire and just take it out. That's all. And that catching and natural taking away of the hand is the wisdom that cannot be taught, cannot be talked about, cannot be shared in words. And yet it is available fully, fully to be the ground from where experiencing happens. And then there may happen a flow where sharing just flowers in whatever way, with or without words, by just sitting quietly with a friend without even having to talk about anything. And that may be the biggest support. That may be the actual friendship in that relationship, where we are not trying to fix the turmoil that our friend may be in, and yet just being there, open, without any intentions. A beautiful sharing may happen, not from an intention, and yet the ever most helpful, the ever most kind. The intention to be compassionate may negate the compassion. The presence of virtue is in the non-realization of the virtue, when where we're not intending to be virtuous. Because if there is an intention to be virtuous, that is self-centeredness, which is coming from an attachment or an intention towards, this is what I'm expecting the outcome to be. And that in itself is half-hearted compassion or virtue. True virtue is when the need to be virtuous, the intention to be virtuous is absent. And as I like to say almost every time, whatever is shared, whatever is spoken here, or maybe actually anywhere, is a concept, not negating its importance of or value, but just to point out that it is not the truth. So holding on to these words as the truth would be not what these concepts are designed for. So we can just let loose of these words that were heard and just see what happens. And let's also open the space for any conversations. If anybody feels to talk or share anything, you can raise your electronic hand on Zoom and I can unmute you. Ranko.
Hi, Gurleen.
Hi, Ranko. How are you?
Oh, nice, thanks. And how are you?
Very well, very well. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Being genuine to yourself and to the other. But on the other hand, we have different kind of social situations when there is, in a way, expected to behave in a certain way. So this like subtle balance between those two is always kind of a question. Because every time we got in those situations, our behavior starts from our unconscious patterns, starts to be there. And sometimes we recognize it even. But in that moment, we do not actually do anything about that. It just happens. So maybe this question, this subtlety, how really, when you see actually yourself behaving differently, then you are genuinely in those kind of situations, what your attitude should be to that behavior yourself.
That's a beautiful nuance that you brought. And that's very true that in being in relationships, living in the world, in the work situation, in the family situation, in friendships, even the most cherished of friendships also, um, there are implied expectations of how I am supposed to be and how the other is supposed to be and how the equation is supposed to be. And there may come a time when we may become the awkward agent in the equation. So not maybe in the family we become more like quieter or louder or more dismissive or ignoring the conversations or whatnot. We all have our own ways to navigate through challenging social situations because let's accept it that we coming in satsang, it is reinforced and realize that how fortunate we are by being seekers, by life bringing us to a place where we have come to really question what really is here based on which this whole experience is playing out. And yet, when I go sit with my parents, it's not comfortable because they just want to know how much you make or how many kids you have and what did you eat for lunch and at certain phase of seeking, all that is unbearably uncomfortable. And we may try to avoid whether it's family or the conversation, or we may change the topic, or we may just have our own ways to soothe our discomfort. And then there may come a time when we realize that it's really not the social situation that is uncomfortable. It is my system, my attitude towards that situation that is triggering discomfort. So the situation is only a trigger and not the reason for my discomfort. So that might be a eureka moment and where we really see that I'm uncomfortable because there is attachment to outcome, maybe. Let's say I subtly am needing or expecting my parents to understand me or to be interested in my seeking journey. And if that's not happening, there is discomfort, even a sense of disconnection with the other, where we are trying to just make distance now. But as it dawns upon us that actually the discomfort is not because of that, it is inherent, deep rooted sense of needing approval from our parents, let's say, that is feeling unbearable and not what they are saying or not saying. And that realization somehow can bring balance, as you said, of being genuine and still being, let's say, chivalrous or socially acceptable in behavior. So if my genuinity means I am just going to dance naked in a party, well, that won't be socially acceptable. So that balance between being genuine and still being amicable or, um, socially acceptable. That balance is actually that wisdom that we were just talking about in the beginning of the talk, that it's not It cannot be taught. It cannot even be made sense of. And yet, that subtle inherent wisdom of not needing attention anymore because I'm not looking for validation out there. So I can be genuine, which may or may not be a little awkward out there in the relationship. And yet there might be a comfort with the other's shock or other's judgment or other's rejection of that new behavior or new way of being. And then there can be a subtle balancing into because the other may also shift into a different role, noticing that we have maybe changed, or the relationship falls away, which is also a possibility. And yet, and there can be this balance of where I'm not abusing the other because that's what I feel genuinely to do. So that balance of being genuine and being socially appropriate is actually a no-brainer from a place of no suffering. It's only when I'm expecting something out of myself that I should behave this way or I shouldn't behave this way, or the other, that they should receive my change nicely or in this way, or they shouldn't reject me or accept me for who I am. All those expectations and attachments and blame and guilt is where the dance feels uncomfortable and challenging. And if we can really see that it's my own guilt or blame or attachment that is feeling uncomfortable and not the situation can really be met from a genuine place and yet be very beautiful, actually. It might be direct, it might even be surprising to ourselves, where it's like, oh, look at that. How did I say that? Or how did I let go of that thing? So it can surprise us as well. And yet, um, there might be a beautiful blend of what we feel like authentically and there being a wisdom of what will be received well also, what is needed in the situation rather than what I feel to express. So th that's really where service and surrender comes, where I'm not coming from a place of, well, I need you to tell this, but from a place of what is the situation and what is the situation asking and what does it need? Not that I can know that from an absolute wisdom point, and yet from the relative sense, whatever feels genuine from a place of what does the situation need rather than what do I need or what do other need, there can be a beautiful blend of authenticity and compassion and um, actually maybe even a more evolved version of relationship.
Yeah, so maybe we can even expand this definition of genuinity because we are also multi-layered beings, you know. We have different layers. Sometimes we are not even aware of those layers. But in this situation, those layers can be actually triggered and come up. And in my experience, sometimes I feel in those situations that like I'm channeling some other entity which is talkable, which is socially acceptable, which is doing the right thing. And that is not actually a problem. That is actually not a problem.
Indeed.
It came from nowhere, you know. And that is real genuinity. You have to take much more of you, you know. We are not just one type of genuinity. It's all kind of type of genuinity. So maybe definition sometimes it's too tight.
Agreed, agreed. Very, very good point. So in the situations where there may be clarity and suffering may not be there, I feel that, okay, now I'm behaving from a genuine place where I'm not self-centered or, looking for approval or validation. And yet, other times when suffering is there and I am functioning from that place, even that is genuine in that moment. Because wherever I come from, whatever I do, is exactly what I am designed to do in that moment. So what else could it be but genuine? Because if there is no other way to be in a moment, then how can it be fake? Because it's not like there is a genuine choice available and I'm choosing to be fake. Even if I'm being fake, that's exactly how I'm designed to be functioning in that moment. So that is the genuine way to be in that situation, in that equation. And if, let's say, we are in a situation where we entered with clarity and then something happened and suffering comes up and we end up creating a scene and whatnot, outwardly, it is unpleasant. And yet, a surrender to how we ourselves even behave, and then using that trigger or that so-called negative outcome as an opportunity to sit back and reflect on it. It's like, where was it coming from? What is still here that hasn't been seen? And that situation that triggered the unconscious behavior, let's say, in a way, can actually be felt grateful for. I can be grateful for my friend or life triggering me, that now I have the opportunity to look at something that I wasn't aware of before. So if my parents push my buttons, or if my colleague pushes my buttons, we can actually thank them every night before going to sleep, because if it weren't for them, we wouldn't even see these invisible buttons that we didn't know we had. So that attitude of surrender towards whatever happens through the other, through ourselves, knowing that it is God's will, it is destined to be however it is in this moment, just one way. And it is my attitude towards that which creates the suffering. And that is what I can look at if even I happen to be ingenuine, again, using it in the context of coming from a place of misunderstanding and not what we mean by genuinity, as you said, expanding the definition of genuine as exactly what we are in each moment. And if it is not fully peaceful, then that's the opportunity for us to sit back and say, hey, let's look at that. If that's what feels to happen, or otherwise just forget about it and go and apologize. And that's okay too.
Wonderful explained. Thank you.
Thank you, Ranko. Very beautiful nuances. And that's the thing. We come in satsang, and as we somehow the content falls away and there's this clarity of the formlessness that I am, that there is, that is all there is. And even me, the person, is within that formlessness. We feel that relating to life from that standpoint is the only right way to relate to life. And that is a misunderstanding. That is an assumption based on misunderstanding. Because even if I'm relating to life as a person, as Gurleen, with no conscious remembering or conscious experience of the background, the beingness that I am, it is possible to not be suffering at all. It is possible to just be this person, not a perfect person, because that is another misunderstanding that we assume as seekers, that we will always be loving, we'll never get angry, we will never be sad. It feels like that, oh, but if understanding has happened, I should always be loving. And what if my kid just hit another child, and then we have to scold them, we have to discipline them? So then do I just sit back and say, oh, I always have to be loving? It doesn't work that way. Understanding as a person is really just falling away of sense of personal doership, that I'm the doer, others the doer, and we are in control of what we think, feel, see, touch, speak, do or don't do. So hence, life could have been different, should have been different, can be different, shall be different, all of that narratives that go on as beliefs, as expectations that, of course, life should have been different. I shouldn't have behaved that way. But the understanding that I'm not the doer and the other is not the doer, and we all are always functioning as instruments from our genes and up-to-date conditioning. And it's impersonal. However personal it may seem to be, it really is impersonal. And it is falling away of attachment to outcome of how I should be. So, oh, I should always be loving. Well, that's attachment to outcome right there in plain and simple form. I should never be angry. That is really saying that I should be able to operate outside of my genes and up-to-date conditioning. Let's say if my system is prone to anger. So a sage is not a perfect person. A sage is just someone who's not challenging the flow of life, who's not challenging their own genes and up-to-date conditioning, and who's not challenging the other's existence. They are flowing exactly as life is flowing, one with the flow of life, without any movement of needing to change it, needing to fix it, needing it to be any different. So I can be a very weird person. I can be a very rude person. I can be a socially awkward person. I can be whatever negative qualities we think a person shouldn't have. I may be all that. And yet the understanding may have taken place fully, even with those traits, because it can only be confirmed within for ourselves that there is no suffering. So even when I might be being rude to someone because, well, because of my genes and up-to-date conditioning, there may not be any suffering. There may not be any guilt or shame towards that. There may not be any blame for the other even. And there may not be an insistence within for the circumstance to be any different. And this explanation, these concepts, when heard from that place of really understanding that unsaid wisdom point of view, it is obvious what is being spoken right now. It's obvious, it's how it is. And yet these same concepts can be taken on from a place of intellectual understanding as a source to bypass life. That, oh, if I'm only supposed to be as I am, so I may just go out and slap people around and hit animals around, and well, that's how I'm supposed to be. I'm just acting from my genes and up-to-date conditioning. And that would be opposite to what these concepts are pointing towards. And that's the paradox that is life. Renee.
Hello, Gurleen.
Hi, Renee. How are you?
I'm okay, thanks. Well, kind of. I'm wondering whether you could say anything about if there's a way of cultivating gratitude and acceptance from within depression.
Thank you for your question, Renee. I was attending a satsang with Roger where he was talking about his teacher, Ramesh Balsekar. And Ramesh used to hold satsangs in India, in Mumbai, where people from all over the world would come and sit with him and listen to him, ask questions. And there were many beings who were going through a state of depression, as they would express that to be, and they would come to Ramesh and share what they're going through and then ask for guidance. And Ramesh would look at them, and because it was India, he would just point out, just go outside and look how much better you have got than so many others. And at times, and Roger mentioned this, that at times it felt like that what an insensitive answer. Like, how could you just be so dismissive of how real and how numbing, in a way, depression can feel, that nothing in life really is alive enough to even for us to forget that sense of hollowness. And yet Ramesh would just look at them and say, just step out and see, just be grateful how much better you have gotten than others. And over time, and even Roger said that over time, when he himself had a little glimpse of depression and just thought about that answer, it's like, well, that is the best way to cultivate gratitude while going through something challenging like that. If we can really appreciate that our body is healthier than many others, we have food to eat, there is electricity, there is internet, there is access to these concepts, there is interest in these concepts, the breath is working fine, the sleep may be coming, sometimes so much and sometimes none at all, but yet there is still sleep that is available for us to experience. There can be rest. Our legs can walk, our hands can move. We have the capacity to think, to feel, even though that may not feel like a blessing at times, because sometimes there's just so much that we'd rather not feel, and yet it is a blessing. The blessing that there can be tears when crying happens, and a catharsis can happen when the emotions can really be felt and be let out. And gratitude to the movement within that can only be God's movement that brought us here to ask this question, to think of this question, to ask this question, and maybe to receive an answer. The answer will not solve it. And yet, the gratitude that you're already interested in cultivating is the beginning of gratitude in itself. And it may not feel very pleasant to hear while we are in depression, because, yeah, if someone told me this when I was going through depression myself, I would have not liked it, and yet I still feel to say it. Even this depression is a blessing. At least in my experience, if it weren't for the experience of depression that was there for years, I wouldn't have been capable of or even interested in questioning the real questions that that life brought in front of me. Everything in life was just so tasteless, so dry, that there was no movement to move anywhere out there in the world for anything. And that in itself, now looking back, has been the biggest blessing, because that was already the groundwork that's needed, that many seekers and practitioners have to work very hard to reach at, by purification practices and renunciation practices, to develop a ground within where the movement towards sense objects can weaken and can stop. And yet, in the state of depression, it's like, now looking back, I can say it was all of that disinterest in the world was delivered to me on a silver platter that felt like depression. So now, from experience, I can say that I am ever so grateful for that phase. And yet, to cultivate gratitude and acceptance within that heavy cloud of existence that it feels like, is just to be grateful for the little mundane things in life: a sip of water, a bite of food, a joke on a reel, or maybe 5 minutes with a puppy or an animal, a meaningful conversation with a friend or a parent or a sibling, or even with ourselves, just a meaningful contemplation of what is meant by any topic that feels important in that moment. Just looking out in the sun, looking at a flower. So just being able to appreciate the availability of everything that is experienced in life, from breath to, yeah, from breath to really that depression that is felt. It's fully there. And we are designed to be able to experience it in the way that we can. That in itself is a marvel. And when it feels too much, some practical tools like journaling, having a gratitude journal, and then being able to go back to it and read through it, can also be very soothing and helpful in the times when there is this feeling stuck within our experience. Thank you, Renee, and I wish you all the love and gratitude. I forgot to mention in the beginning of our talk, and maybe I'll mention it next Sunday as well, hopefully in the beginning. there is this movement to wanting to offer one-on-one time with anyone who wants to spend some time in a conversation, just sharing anything that might be appearing personally for someone, or just in the seeking journey, if there is a pattern or a theme going on, and if there is a desire to have a mirror in front, or just going back and forth in understanding the pattern, or just going deeper within the journey. I would love to be an assistant in that. And if you guys feel to have a one-on-one together, you can reach out to me on different channels. Under every YouTube video, there is a link towards my Instagram, Facebook, and WhatsApp community. So feel free to reach out on whichever medium you feel to. And then we can schedule a Zoom call, just personally one-on-one, and we can have a chat or just sit quietly, whatever calls us in that moment. And these one-on-ones don't have a cost to them. They are totally donation basis, so you can donate if you want, and you don't have to if there is not a desire there. So yes, this month, if something comes up, I would love to hear from you, and let's see how it unfolds. We are all in this together. We are together, and we are not two. So we are not together, we are literally not two. This is one movement of life flowing as all of us in every moment as it does. So you are not alone. We, as that, is all there is. So the concept of alone and not alone doesn't even apply. Until next Sunday, thank you for joining. I love you all.